Hello, hello. My name is Kayla Brick. I am a Upwork coach and professional illustrator. Today we are talking about how to stop spending connects on really bad jobs on here. And this is part 2. I had another video that is all about how to create filters so that you're just seeing the really good jobs that are in your budget range that are not highly competitive. And today we're going to talk about job analysis, which is my favorite thing in the world aside from analytics and algorithms and things like that. So I want you to just look at these job listings closer because the cool thing about Upwork is that it gives us tons and tons of information. So we can make a lot of better decisions before we ever work with a client on here. I'm showing you my illustration jobs. We can take a look at a couple of other niches as well. When we're looking at these things, I want you to create your filters. But let's now start to look at the various job listings. I'll look at best matches and most recent too to show you some of the pitfalls that we run into. This guy right here. First thing I look at when I look at a job listing is when was it posted? This was posted 2 hours ago. A lot of times you'll see stuff on here that's been posted 24 hours ago, 48 hours ago, 2 days ago, sometimes even up to a month. It's just a job listing. It is on the client to actually close this thing down. Upwork does eventually clean them out, but it does take them time to do that. The first thing I look at is when was this posted? I like that 24 to 48 hours for Upwork because it shows the most interest from the client. This is when they are looking at the job listing. This is when they are excited about the job listing. They get somebody hired pretty quickly. And they only have that motivation to look at job proposals for that short little window of time. Sometimes you'll see it up to a couple of days, but most of the time it's be that 48 hours. So that's the first thing I look at. Second thing I do is I look at the connects. 10 connects, pretty middle of the road. You see 6 connects as probably the lowest on here. Sometimes you'll see 4 or 2. That's really crazy low. But 10 connects, 11 connects, that's pretty middle of the road for a job listing on here. 17 or 16, that's a very expensive job. The difference between the connects on here is that 16, 17, that's more of a highly qualified freelancer that they're looking for. They're expecting less proposals because the job listing is so expensive. But if we see the slightly more middle of the road or less connects, most likely they're looking for a lot of proposals and they'd be motivated to look through all of them because they have made it less expensive for freelancers on here. But that's the difference there. If I see 10 connects, that's middle of the road. I'm still happy with that. Let's see this job description. Upwork is currently very AI focused. I don't expect that to change anytime soon. We're gonna have to be dealing with the changes in the way that these descriptions are written. It used to be there was some things to look at that helped us to identify that this was a human that wrote this thing and less scams, but now we're dealing with the age of AI at this point. It is difficult to analyze these things. But what we're looking for ideally is a lot of information about this posting, what they need done, and any indications that this is a human being. If they sign it with their name, that's always a good indication. If we have any questions, always good to see that. I like logistical overview stuff. That's always helpful too. This looks like a pretty reasonable job description. I'd have to look at this thing closer. I'd like to look through this thing to see if I have any questions for the client or what is their demeanor. Sometimes you'll see a picky client will put just tons and tons and tons and tons of little things in there. They might show little signs of micromanagement. You'll get some little spidey senses triggers on what kind of client you work with, and you can start identifying those as you look through job descriptions. But this looks pretty reasonable. I'm looking for questions that I have for the client. I'm also looking for what is this client really interested in? A lot of times you'll see stuff like time frame, the way they want it done. Maybe if it's in this case, they want it to be KDP specific, which is Amazon preparation for those files. Anything that you can just pick out is something that's really crucial to the client is make you stand out on here because when you send a proposal in to this client, most people send a template of some kind. And they're just put in there, hey, I do, in this case, children's book work. And that's all I do. I've done all of these different jobs. It's very me focused, and they don't really put anything specific to the job listing, or they don't ask questions about the job listing, or they don't ask anything that's specific to this particular client's interests. Anything you do in that category is make you stand out. I highly recommend you look through that thing, see if there's anything that's really important to this client, and just put it front and center on your proposal. That'll make all the difference when it comes to getting hired on here. Other things to look for. We have intermediate. I mentioned this in my other video. Sometimes intermediate or beginner can be an indication of how much they pay you. I wouldn't put a whole lot of weight into that, but anytime you see intermediate or advanced or expert, always a good sign. Just says that the client's expecting to have to pay extra for that. Fixed rate price, this just says that they do a fixed rate contract, which means they're not doing it by the hour. I personally like fixed rate contracts, and I explain more about that in other videos, but this budget perfectly reasonable. I'd have to look it through this closer to see what they're asking for, if this makes sense. But what I want you to focus on here is this budget match our reviews? In this case, we don't have any, but activity on the job, also super helpful, is 10 to 15 proposals. That's perfectly reasonable. I see the hour ago for the client there, the last viewed by the client. That's also really helpful to see that the client last viewed this thing an hour ago. That shows activity. That's always nice to see as well. I like to see these little skills, these keywords. I like to write those down and put those in my profile and my descriptions and things. Upwork's internal language that has identified this particular job listing, but also can give insight into the client's mindset. You can look through this thing, get a little bit of extra insight into what's going on there. All right, let's take another look here. Hopefully something that has good reviews. Let's do another one here. This one has reviews. Let me show you what this should look like. We look at this budget, and we've done an hourly job contract for $269. They've never had any history of actually sending somebody $800 on here, which makes it iffy for me that they'll do it again or at all. I like to see a history with this client that they have of paying people exactly what they're offering you, or at least in the ballpark of it. Let me see if I can find another one here that has, yeah, we've got some reviews here. I can see that they've done fixed rate contracts for about $100, about 1,000. Yeah, let's see if they've done 1,000 before. Yeah, it looks like we've got a fixed rate contract that was about for 1,100 there. They have a history of paying people around that price, which means in my mind that they'll do it again. But that's always nice to see. I like to see a lot of 5-star reviews as well. 20 to 50, very competitive, not surprising for $1,000 job on here. Somebody was hired for it. That tells us a whole bunch. That also tells us that there's no reason to send anything into this one. It's already been the platform for 2 days. But all this other stuff, super useful to look through. I like to see reviews. I like to see how much was this thing for? How many days has it been on the platform? Always nice to see the questions being asked to the freelancer as well. Anything like that is going to be helpful to you. If you see any of these red flags where the budget doesn't match what they've paid people in the past, or it's 20 to 50 proposals and there's nothing happening with the viewed on the client here, they haven't looked at the job listing in days, or nobody's been hired, or nobody's interviewing, that's a big red flag to me. Anything that's 20 connects, this is crazy and out of control. It happens also. If we see a job description that's just, it's pretty sparse, there's not a whole lot on it, or you're seeing some of the pretty scammy related copy and text on here, which I have other videos for that as well that you can take a look at, then that would also be a huge red flag to me too. And anything, even if other things are lining up properly, could be a reason that you don't send something into a job listing. Any of those things that you come across where the budget doesn't match, or you're seeing the connects are really out of control and it doesn't make sense with the description, or something's thrown you off. If it's been on the platform for 2 days and you don't see any activity, those could all be reasons that you don't send or waste connects on a job listing. Hopefully that helps you not waste connects on really bad jobs on here, and you start to see more really good, well-priced jobs on here and people who are active, excited to hire people. I hope that has been helpful to you. And if you need more help on making filters, I will link that video somewhere on screen for you, and I will see you guys in the next one.